Music, in its most simple form, begins with one note. A note can be combined with another note and form a chord. A chord can turn into a song. Chances are somebody in this room has been influenced by music. It could have been that song you heard on the radio when you were going to your senior prom. Maybe not. It could have been that song that just reminds you of the best time you had with your friends. Whatever it is, music is personal. It's complex. It's different depending on who you are and where you are and what you're doing. It has to do with our thoughts, our feelings, what we're doing. Like health, it's extremely personal. Like health, the foundation of our achievement. But sometimes when we think about health and we lose sight of things like mental health, we miss a note. And it just doesn't sound right. Like, what's off with that? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't sound as good as it did. It's distracting. Perhaps we can't get it right. We keep trying to a point where trying hard is not enough. So we start over. You see, sometimes we need to step away to get perspective. We can't see what's not working until we get a little distance. Well, my friends, today is about righting a wrong. It's about doing something that we know we needed to do a long time ago, bringing mental health and addictions to the center of all our redesign on healthcare. Truthfully, we have a problem. This problem is pretty big. But before I get to the problem, let me just tell you about this moment. Mental health is on everyone's radar. You've probably had these conversations back home. Everybody wants to talk about it right now, and they should. The science is irrefutable. We know more now than we've ever known before about mental health. But for some reason, we keep getting stuck. We've got systems, we've got policy, we've got financing that stands in our way that doesn't allow us to truly see this new vision of mental health, one that's seamlessly integrated. Last year alone, we lost 151,000 people in this country to drug, alcohol, and suicide. That is the most ever on record since we've been keeping track of those data. 151,000 lives. Life expectancy has dropped 3 times the last 3 years. Each year, it's dropped. We're spending more, we're getting less. What do we need to do? What is our new vision for mental health? Well, I'm going to ask you that question a lot today. But I'll tell you, our vision has got to be where we prioritize access. 96 million Americans had to wait a ton of time, more time than they should have, over a week, before they could get access to mental health. What about that is right? Would you be willing to wait? 46% of folks had to drive more an hour round trip so they could see a mental health clinician. In this day and age, when you can literally do and buy and see whatever you want, anytime you want it, why should the thing that's most personal to us, our health, be the things that we have to work the hardest to get? We're not in the places that people show up. We need to bring integrated health, make that a reality, bring mental health to the places where people are. Integrate and disintegrate. Get out in the community. We need a new vision for access, one that really puts you where the community is. We need to think of coverage. It's unfortunate in 2019 that people still are denied care because of their health insurance. Mental health parity has been on the books for 10 years, folks, and we still have states that don't enforce the law. Our vision for this redesign of healthcare, where mental health is at the hub, need to make standards a reality. How can we make it feel less like a lottery as to what people are going to get? How can we assure quality at every turn so that no matter where they go and who they see, they're going to get and experience the type of care that they deserve? But like a song that's not working, sometimes we have to do something different. Change is hard. I think you all know this. There's countless examples from all over our society of how hard change is. 1957, Henry Ford, the Ford Motor Company, put $250 million into an idea that they thought was going to be revolutionary. They said, we're going to create this car that everyone is going to want. They called it the Edsel. The Ford Edsel lasted 4 years on the market. It was the vision, and they couldn't change. They didn't change. Second one, Blockbuster. You remember this one, right? In 2000, a man came to Texas and offered the CEO of Blockbuster an opportunity to buy his business. This business, really simple. I think we should mail people their DVDs. Didn't work. Change is hard. 2008, Blockbuster folded. Circuit City, Toys R Us. I can go on and on with examples from business. At the heart of this, it's complex. It's not just one thing. But at the heart is that the community, you, decided you wanted something different. Each one of you, you made a choice. Now think about the application to healthcare. You see, success requires continuous disruption. You cannot be successful doing what you've always done. Wonderful examples out there on this. Google. Google was never content to be a search engine. Google had bigger ambitions. Apple didn't just want to make computers. And the list goes on. These organizations practice disruption because they know it's at the heart of their success. And right now, for our field, my friends, we have a world that's demanding something different. Mental health transformation requires a lot of us. It will require a lot of each of you. Changing the culture of mental health to make it at the center of everything we do is an extremely heavy lift. But we all need to play our part. So today, I want you to take a journey with me. Because there's a big, bold, beautiful vision out there on the future of healthcare where mental health is not a part of it. How will you walk away from today assuring that it's a part of it? I'm going to give you 3 perspectives, and you're going to hear from 3 perspectives to see what happens when we are courageous and we stand up and we fight for the things that are most important for advancing mental health. Courage is at the heart of this change. If you want to talk about music and examples of courage in music, we can go all the way back to Beethoven, who refused to be put into a category. We can talk about Bob Marley, who thought that you could heal racism and hatred with the power of a song. Miles Davis, for 40 years, has never, ever, ever been told that he has to play a certain way. He's always redefined himself. This entire presentation could be profiles of courage. Think about your story for a second. What did you do? Did you display courage?
In 1987, I was 10 years old. My father wasn't a cook, but he would make scrambled eggs before my Little League practices. And we would wolf it down and then run downhill from our house to the baseball field, buoyed by his pride that I was the only girl on the team. On Friday nights, our religious observance was watching the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour. And then he would grill me, asking me, when do you think there will be the first woman president? And do you think it will be you? But the most important date for me in 1987 was the day that I found my father curled on the dining room rug in the grips of what would be one of many of his depressions. I crouched down next to him and he told me that he wanted to kill himself. I asked him how he would do it and he told me he would jump off the Tobin Bridge. And I asked him whether he loved me enough to stay alive, and he said no. My father lived, but struggled to work. And my family, we teetered, down one paycheck, relying on my mom's school teacher's salary. Even as a little kid, I knew we lived in the shadow of financial and emotional distress. We never, ever, ever talked about this. Not at home, not to our friends, and certainly now out in the world. Even being here today is a familial sin. But it should come as no surprise in retrospect that 8 years later, I would be a college student walking the hallways of a chaotic hospital in Boston, asking the doctors, what's the one thing your patients most need to be healthy? They shared the same story again and again, one that I've heard hundreds of variations of since. They would say every day, we have patients that come into the clinic, asthma exacerbation, and I prescribe a controller medication, but I know that patient is living in a mold-infested apartment. Every day, a kid comes into the clinic with an ear infection, and I prescribe antibiotics, but I know that the real issue is that there's no food at home. And I don't ask about those issues because there is nothing I can do. Now, it seemed that it shouldn't be that hard to design our doctor's visits around what people actually need to be healthy. So I created Health Leads, an organization helping thousands of physicians and caregivers across the country to ask their patients, what do you need to be healthy? And then prescribe that thing. Fruits and vegetables, heat in the winter, electricity to refrigerate their medicine. And we then navigated them to those resources in their communities. It should also come as no surprise that after 2 decades, I became impatient. And a year ago, walked away from the organization I founded with my partner in crime, Rocco Perla, to start a new initiative rooted in 2 premises. First, that our healthcare system may be changing, but not by enough and certainly not fast enough. And second, that while we as a country may be deeply divided on healthcare, we are, or could be, unified on health. It's hard to say all of this out loud because it's taken me 25 years to be honest with myself that this is why I do this work. That day on the carpet with my father, that birthed this relentless obsession with moving our country's money and discourse from a focus on healthcare to health. Knowing that my father, to recover, needed healthcare, but to be healthy, my family needed more. We needed a decent income. And knowing, as so many folks do far more than I, that rising panic when the basics threaten to slip away. But it is more than that. It is way deeper than that. I haven't talked about my father's illness or its impact on my family because I don't want people to think that I am like him. And the truth is, I am not like him, but I am who I am because of him. Yes, the scrambled eggs and the belief that I could be president, but more so than anything else, that day on the carpet together. It's hard to admit, but his illness and the havoc that it wreaked on my family for decades gave me 3 gifts, 3 tools for change that I put to work every day. First, when your father tells you he doesn't love you enough to stay alive, you have a choice. You believe him or you believe in yourself. And it was too painful to do the first, so I did the second. And I'll just say, when your life's work is fighting every day to transform a healthcare system that is 19% of GDP, most people spend most of the time telling you that you are seeing things, that the things you most know have to be true will never come to pass. And you have a choice. You can believe them or you can believe yourself. Knowing when to walk away from the disbelievers, when to trust your gut about what is or what could be, that's the gift my father gave me. The second gift was a hard wiring for the fight. I know this will sound ridiculous, but I think about it all the time. That moment when Peter Parker gets bitten by the spider and becomes Spider-Man, that was me. That day on the rug in the dining room, I would never be the same person again. From that moment on, I knew that if my father was going to be on his medication, it would be because I fought for that to happen. If our family were to survive, it would be because I fought for that as well. That hardwiring for the fight, to be an advocate, that has to be deployed against the hardest challenges of our country. It has to be deployed to fix a deeply broken health and healthcare system. And the third thing he gave me was comfort in the unknown. Coming home from school every day, not knowing which father I would get, the bitter anger, the manic laughter, the eerie quiet of his next depression. As a kid, I only knew uncertainty. And now, as an adult, the absence of change is what makes me anxious. Diving into the abyss, seeing the unseen, that is where I feel most comfortable. Sometimes I wonder if these are just the things I tell myself to make all the pain have been worth it. But here's what I really believe, that my story is in no way unique. That in this room and in rooms across the country, they are full of broken hearts that harbor the very tools that we most need for change, the very things that will upend everything. I believe that we suffer in this country from an epidemic of untold stories. Courage to me is being willing to tell your story, to tell it to yourself, to tell it out loud, to tell it to the world. And knowing that every time you do that, you create permission for another person to do the same. But courage is also about holding ourselves accountable to the truth of our stories. It's about being willing to take every risk that our story has prepared us to take, harnessing the pain for the things that really, really matter. Being willing to shed the incrementalism, refusing to use the same tools on the same old problems, putting it all on the table, including being willing to walk away from the titles, the positions, our own work for a truth that is greater. Great pain begets great courage if we put it to work. And in that, real change becomes possible.
Even in the face of courage, we sometimes fail. How do you fail fast, fail smart, fail often? We learn by failing. It's at the cornerstone of how we evolve. When was the last time you failed? It's a scary thing, but it's something that we should embrace. If you want to be courageous, embrace failure. You want to be expressive of what the community actually wants? Tolerate risk. This is our cornerstone. But in order to do this, we've got to be resilient. What is resilience? It's a word we use a lot. Well, what is it? Let's hear firsthand.
It was 1944 when a beautiful black woman walked down a street in Brooklyn, New York, strolling her 6-month-old baby in a carriage. She walked straight to the corner, talking to herself the whole time. People wondered if she was talking to the baby. And she would walk across the curb straight into an oncoming truck. The stroller pushed forward and the baby rolled out. and strangers would pick up the baby. The woman, Carrie, would be taken to the hospital. And in her long recovery, she found out she was pregnant. And 6 months later, Teresa was born. Teresa is my mother. And Teresa would grow up in a family that never acknowledged Carrie. Carrie would go to a nursing home for people who talk to themselves. And Teresa would raise her 3 children on welfare, not temporary assistance to needy families, welfare. She would work 3 jobs under the table, and that she would take care of her children, and one would become a doctor, one would become a historian, chair of history at MIT, and the other would talk to herself and laugh at mirrors and bring joy to the entire family. But still, as a family, we learn to not talk about it, not acknowledge it, to ignore the beautiful butterflies in our family. The butterflies who spread their wings and showed us colors we had never seen. I would go on to med school and become that pediatrician. I would, at Georgetown, see multiple butterflies and start a practice in Washington, D.C., and take care of 10,000 butterflies, all who would show me colors I've never seen before. I would have 4 children of my own, 3 boys and 1 girl. And my daughter, the moment she was born, the second she was born, she began to sing. And she sang beautifully. And at 2 years old, she would climb to the top of a couch and she would spread her beautiful butterfly wings and leap off onto the ground, laughing at the thud that she made. I would begin to realize as she got older that she too was a butterfly. And I, a pediatrician, was so scared of what that meant that I would hold her too tight, medicate her too much, and try to clip the wings of a butterfly. Until one day, this resilient, beautiful butterfly came to me as an adolescent, and she stopped taking all her meds, and she started practicing yoga and meditation, and she started eating clean and healthy. And before I knew it, she had blossomed a set of wings that were incredible. And she taught me and Teresa to no longer fear the butterflies. We are 3 generations of women, Black women, who have had to hide poverty, who have had to hide mental illness, who have had to hide because of labels, structural racism, gender bias, whatever you want to call it. But now we have grown, and there is a new generation, a generation filled with butterflies and difference we embrace. For me, for us, the struggle is real, but the struggle is so beautiful. And we no longer fear. We no longer hide. And we see that the wind beneath the wings of a butterfly comes from all of us accepting difference as being real and being resilient to the fact that we too can soar. So, when butterflies soar, the world is better. And we should all embrace a day where we can accept difference in all of its many colors. Thank you.
Our narrative is wrong in mental health. This is not one in whatever. Mental health and addictions are all of us. That's the right narrative. When we begin to process that and take it home and see it for what it is, we normalize the solution. This is about us. This is about you, the person next to you, your family, your friends. That is our fight. Don't get lost in some of the noise, but see it for what it is. We have to be courageous. We have to be resilient. We have to be willing to stand up and prepare for what's coming next. Well, it comes down to leadership. This is about inspiration. How can you inspire the folks that are out there that you're working with every day? This is not about motivating. That's an external thing. Inspiration literally translates in spirit. What is your vision for the future of mental health? What inspiration will you bring to others, including those you're serving, and how you'll achieve that vision? How will you inspire? Sometimes, my friends, we need to take a stand.
When is the last time your executive director shadowed a shift with your crisis team or toured your methadone clinic? Does your manager know your birthday? Do they celebrate it? What would it look like if our organizations acted like a family that truly cared about one another? The irony is not lost on us that we know the keys to mental health and wellness, and we freely give them to the people that we serve, but we withhold them from one another. The tribalism that has permeated our political sphere has seeped into our organizations, pitting departments and vocations against one another. We often reward the wrong behavior, dogged, insistent competitiveness, instead of servant leadership. The truth is that leadership is hard even when you do it right. The vulnerability and compassion and courage that we express every day will be mirrored by the people that we serve, that we lead, that are watching us. It is hard to walk down a different path than the one that has taken us this far. And it is easy to ask the world around us to simply change when we're not opening our heart. At the end of the day, we're just heartbeats away from each other. Lies that divide us become lines that define us. We can do better. We're made for better. It's time to bridge the silos, break down walls, bravely give your hand. Make a choice for better days. It starts when you and I take a stand. We weren't born this way, but time and fear conspired to take us from the hope that we once knew. But today is a new day. Keep us humbled but inspired, stronger but not tired, to seek the greater truth. Behind every name badge and office door sign, someone's sister, someone's father, someone's precious child. When we find the human in everyone we seek, we'll proudly lay foundation of a new legacy. It's time to bridge the silos, break down walls, bravely give your hand. Make a choice for better days. Starts when you and I take a stand. Down walls, bravely give your hand. Make a choice for better days. Starts when you and I take a stand. It is hard to walk down a different path than the one that has taken us this far.
Courage, resilience, leadership. 3 qualities each of you must possess in this journey that we're embarking on together. Today, you've heard a little bit of the story, but it's going to come back to you. How do we create a symphony of change today? I don't know about you folks, I'm not really that patient. And what's happening out there right now is unacceptable. What we need is for each of you, for all of us, to rise up together and demand something different. If you don't, someone else will. And that vision may not be what you're thinking of right now. So how do we create a symphony of change? So rather than go away today and just say, that was cool, got to sit in a room, eat my lunch, heard some great talks, the band was okay, good. They're really good, by the way. How do we put this back on you? This conference, the gathering of leaders, is inspiring. Like the music that you're hearing, like the images that you're seeing, you'll react to it, and you'll remember these moments. But how do you go away and do something more than just say that was a great event? So I'm going to ask you to do something. This is a little awkward, but you might like it. I don't know. We'll see. Those of you that are on your devices, tweeting away or doing whatever you're doing, I want you to take them out for a second. So there's this thing called a hashtag that we use. If you don't know what it is, just kind of close your eyes for a minute. We've been tagging NatCon 19 for this entire event. I want you to do something for me. I'm going to let you take a minute to yourselves, and I want you to tag what you're going to do, tag yourself, and say what you're going to do between now and NatCon 2020. And I want you to tag it like this: NatCon 19, NatCon 2020. Take a minute and do this, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do with that. What action will you take when you go back home to advance mental health in this country? How will you increase access for those people that are having to wait too long? How will you advocate to your capital when you know that the coverage that your state is offering isn't good enough, or the plans and what they're offering isn't good enough? How will you create high quality, affordable care for everybody? These are not easy questions to answer. I know that. But if you can't answer it, who will? This is a moral imperative that we're facing, folks. I told you at the beginning, people are dying now more than they've ever died before from preventable causes. We know some of what we can do will make a difference in that. There's other things that we're going to have to fight for. So take a moment and think about your action. Now here's what we're going to do. I haven't checked this out with anybody yet, so I might get in trouble for doing this, but we're going to do it. We're going to look at what you just did. Because, NatCon 2020 hasn't happened yet. And so those of you that were bold and brave enough to put out there what you want to do, we're going to go find out what you said. And we're going to kind of take the stories and take the ideas, we're going to bring them all together, and then we might find that 4 or 5 of you are right here next year. Why not? The point of gatherings like this is to learn. It's to be inspired. It's to walk away with a new friend that you made. But most importantly, what's important for us, and I think it's important for you, is that change happens. Change will not happen if we don't commit. That is on you now. Tell us your story and what you're going to do. This, my friends, in 2019, this is our mental health moment. It may not come again for a while. You can question it, and you can say, I'm not sure it's really the time. Maybe it's going to be next year. That's when it's going to be right. No, it's now. Let's orchestrate a symphony of change that begins with each of you. While there's amazingly talented musicians behind this curtain, it could just as easily be one of you. What they bring to this table is what you bring to the table. It's just in a different way. We all have a role to play. Create your vision and do it now. It's an urgency. Be courageous. Be willing to fail. Be resilient. Lead in service to the people that are looking to you for answers. My friends, our communities are watching. It's time. Now, when you go home and people look at what you've done, what will you tell them? When they ask you your story, what will you say? When they tell you, we want something different, how will you listen? This is your mandate. This is your charge. Everyone is watching. It's your time.